You're listening to the 12 Days of Crusademas 2024, brought to you by the Longbox Crusade.
And Transformers G.I. Joeing.
Hello, and welcome to the first day of the 12 Days of Crusademas for 2024, brought to you by the Longbox Crusade. The 12 Days of Crusademas is our gift to the podcast community to celebrate this holiday season. And we're celebrating this joyous season by sharing with you some comic book titles that may have gotten by you in the past. Each of the 12 Days of Crusademas will bring you a hidden gem of a comic book series. Brought to you either by one of our holly jolly co-hosts or one of our podcast celebrity guests, until we get all the way to December 25th, Christmas Day. And I'm your host for the first day of Crusademas. I'm kicking it off. I'm lighting the candle this holiday season. It's me, Jason Albrick, the Christmas Weasel. And here are three geese a-laying holiday bits joining me for today's unwrapping. I'm going to go out on a limb and say at least one of them has a bad Christmas joke. Pat's looking guilty. I'm going to start with Pat.
Well, hello, Jason, and everybody. Welcome around the fireplace again. It's so great to be back here. We're going to get things started off with our annual Who's Doing What decorations. So I'll get together with Clinton in a little bit. We'll go downstairs, get the stuff out of the basement. And
Clinton doesn't have to go downstairs. He's already down there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. But you know what I mean? I'll call down there and have him start rearranging the boxes and get it up for me.
Good idea.
But yeah, it's great to be here. I do not have a joke.
Okay.
You know, I figured, I was going to try it again this year, but I'm going to let Jarrett win that joke off anymore. That way we don't have to, everybody can have their own little bits. But I do have something that I want to bring to this Crusademas this year. And, since things went well with my jokes, I wanted to do something kind of different and bring back some storytelling at this time. So if you guys would allow me throughout this Christmas time to just give a brief story, a little Christmas story, like a LBC Crusademas story that I would have. If you guys would allow me to sit by the fireplace, let me tell you just a quick short story that I came up with.
Tell us a tale, Pat.
It begins like this. In the enchanting realm of the playroom, a spirited battle unfolded as toy soldiers clashed with futuristic toy robots on Christmas Eve. The dim glow of fairy lights illuminated the miniature battlefield beneath the tree, where the soldiers adorned in vibrant uniforms valiantly defending the territory against the sleek metallic invaders. Toy tanks rumbled across the carpet plains, and the air echoed with the soft hum of robot warriors gearing up for a Yuletide showdown. Amidst the chaos, a brave toy soldier named Captain Nutcracker rallied his comrades, urging them to stand tall against the mechanical foes. On the other side, the toy robots, led by Commander Circuit, deployed advanced laser beams and futuristic gadgets. The clash of traditional versus futuristic unfolded like a whimsical dance, creating a magical spectacle that only toys could manifest on the special night. Little did they know, the magic of Christmas intervened, turning the battle into a playful exchange of laughter and camaraderie, bringing joy to both sides in the spirit of the season.
Okay, so he put in Nutcracker G.I. Joe Transformers into
ChatGPT. Yeah. It's not a bad story.
No, it's not a bad story.
I mean, if we're going to compare it to the jokes, I thought the story was pretty good, all things considered.
It was better than it's true.
Yeah. I'll give that a good, strong start. I'm still looking for a Christmas joke, so I guess I got to keep going around the horn here. Jared, I know you got one. Go ahead.
Well, I hate to disappoint, but I've decided to make my theme for this year's Crusademas Christmas time trivia.
Oh, okay.
All right. So this is the time we sing Christmas songs. Oftentimes there'll be church hymns, so I figured this would be appropriate. And it also ties to one of my very favorite game series, is Mortal Kombat. If you remember back to Mortal Kombat 1, the opening music goes dun 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 dun. And it's been uncovered that is actually a little tune that is a Christmas song sung in church in Finland. It ends up that Mortal Kombat song is a Finnish hymn.
Finish him.
I lied their jokes.
Oh, thank goodness.
How much padding I had to put around that to get you to believe that I was doing trivia.
You had to do like a warm up. You had to stretch out your hammies before you walked that joke around.
Because it was a Finnish hymn.
Finish him.
I got it. That's enough out of you. Let's go around and finish this up right with Delvin the Dark Web Williams. Happy holidays, my friend. What's going on?
Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you and everybody. Jason, just wanted to say from earlier that Pat spared us of the joke off between Jared and Pat. And that's a good thing because like too many people joke off and it makes a mess. That was not my joke. My joke, it's not really a joke. It's more of we have been doing this. Crusade was saying 2017, 2018, 1920, 1, 2, 3, 7 years, right? 7 years. And I have never asked or lobbied for a gift. You lobbied all the time for a Sky Striker. You got a Sky Striker.
I did get a Sky Striker.
Right. And other people. So I figured.
I regret nothing.
You shouldn't. You should not. And it's my turn. I'm casting the die now.
Okay.
And I am manifesting that somebody is going to get me Amazing Fantasy 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. I mean, if you can get a Sky Striker, comparatively, that's like about the same price as an Amazing Fantasy 15. I think this is a bulletproof plan, and I see nothing wrong with it.
Didn't we get him Omega Supreme?
We got him.
We did get him an Omega Supreme.
I did not lobby for Omega Supreme, sir. I did not lobby for it.
Not on the show, but he was sending like actual physical letters to our houses. And then everybody's just like cutting out like the newspaper, like a ransom note, like we wouldn't know who it was from.
It's like you put the forwarding address, Delvin. It's yours. Son of a.
Oh man. Well, we are kicking this thing off right this year. We got stories, we got jokes, we got Delvin lobbying for Amazing Fantasy 15. But you know what else we got? We got us a guest. Of course we do. Because joining us today around the fireplace is the G.I. Joe junkie himself. We're talking Jim Miel. Welcome, Jim, and thanks for joining us for day one. Why don't you let the listeners know a little bit about yourself and how you earned that nickname, the Joe Junkie.
Well, guys, thanks for having me on for the first day of Crusademas. Well, pretty much as the name states, the Joe Junkie. If you were able to see around my shed here, it's full of G.I. Joe. Some would say junk, but it's a treasure to me.
I can verify.
One thing I don't have, Jason, though, is a Sky Striker. So I feel your pain from years ago. But I do. All
you got to do is lobby.
Is that what it is? Okay. Well,
every day for the 12 days.
I can see. Yeah. I only got one day to do it though, so I'm gonna have to press the issue. But no, as far as the junkie nickname, if it's got to do with GI Joe, I've got a pretty good idea what's going on with it, and I just enjoy it. Enjoyed it since I was a wee lad, and dropped out of it for a little while, and got back into it, and now I'm knee deep in
GI Joe stuff.
GI Joe stuff. So,
oh boy. Well, why don't you tell us what you got gift wrapped in that holiday stocking there?
As you heard in the singing intro today, is Transformers G.I. Joeing, which means we're unwrapping Transformers G.I. Joe #1 from Dreamwave in 2003. Now, for a brief history, it was written by John Nay Ryber, who I'm aware of, who wrote Captain America 2002, and the artist by Jay Lee, who did X Factor, Namor, Inhumans, and many others. G.I. Joe and Transformers began their crossover history in 1986 with a 4-issue limited series by Marvel. Then in 1993, Transformers Generation 2 made appearances in a handful of the G.I. Joe comic book issues, and the Joes made a few appearances in the Transformers Generation 2 comic book as well. Now, fast forward to the early 2000s. I'm in my late to mid 20s. All my favorite childhood toy properties are getting popular again. New toys, comics, cartoons, things like G.I. Joe, Transformers, even Masters of the Universe. And then in 2003, you hear that there's going to be 2 different crossovers between G.I. Joe and Transformers. One published by Devil's Due, who had the G.I. Joe license, and the other published by Dreamwave, who had the Transformers license. Each of these storylines and styles were different from each other and not connected to any of the current or past continuities. So each publisher had a new sandbox they could play in. Besides the 6-issue miniseries that we're talking about, there was a second series called Divided Front that Dreamwave put out that only had 1 issue that was released before it went bankrupt. This series was set in the 80s, and the character designs were closer to the traditional designs of both G.I. Joe and Transformers. Some of the reasons why I like the book. Now, I can't speak for Transformers fans, but Joe fans are usually in 2 camps when it comes to different continuities for their Joe stories. Those that read only stories from Larry Hama, and those that are open to other continuities. I'm in the latter camp, open to other continuities. Now, before I get hate posts and voicemails, Larry Hama is the gold standard for Joe writers. But if you haven't checked out the Devil's Due stories, most of the stories from IDW, then you're really missing out. Now, I'm willing to give each new Joe continuity a chance. If I'm not enjoying it, I stop buying it when it's released and wait for it to show up in the discount bins. Because I'm a completist and have to have every issue of G.I. Joe. It's a sickness. Not only every issue, but every cover as well. So when I picked up this issue in the comic store back in 2003, I liked the somewhat darker and grittier take on the Transformers and G.I. Joe crossovers. It was different from any other of the previous crossovers. As I was reading this series in 2003, it seemed to be more mature take, maybe because of the darker tone and the time frame that it took part in World War II. I liked how they introduced and used the characters, Joes and Transformers. They still had the traits that they were known for, but adjusted for the time that it was set in. You don't see many of the Transformer alt modes, but their alt modes were adjusted for the technology that was available in the late 1930s. Grimlock is a tank, Bumblebee is a motorcycle, and the Seekers are, of course, propeller-driven airplanes. That's why I like the book. So, Pat, have you read any of the Transformers G.I. Joe crossovers from Dreamwave?
No, I haven't. For some reason, this must have just slid by me at this time, 2003. Yeah, I think this is where I was kind of dipping out. Kids were born and so taking on the family side of it. So this really is a blind spot for me.
Kids got to eat.
Yep, they take all
can't
my
eat
money.
comic books. Yeah, I know. They do.
See, this is when I was getting back in, when Devil's Due was just start putting their stuff out. And that's when I was getting back into G.I. Joe, which got me into the stores, which got me back into all their stuff. So how about you, Delvin? Have you read any of the Transformers G.I. Joe from Dreamwave?
I want to say yes. It's hazy. Like, I could have checked my comic book database to see whether or not I did for certain, but this feels familiar to me. Like, I'd heard about it and I tried to pick up 1 issue or 2 and for some reason just was unable to complete the set. I think I've read one of them before.
All right. Thank you, Delvin. Jared, how about you? Have you read any of the Transformers G.I. Joe crossovers?
Yes, I have. And yes, I picked these up when they were new off the shelf back in the day, but I haven't read them since then.
And last but not least, Jason?
This is a first read for me. I don't know how I missed this, but I'm with Pat. They must have slid by me. This is good stuff, but I missed it.
All right. Thanks, guys, for catching me up on whether you've read it or not. And now for a quick summary of issue number 1. In 1938, while leading an attack on a monastery, Major Blood, looking for what Cobra Commander says is the ultimate weapon, which is later revealed to be the Matrix, Major Blood locates the ultimate weapon. He is not impressed until the building begins to shake and the Decepticons are awakened. The following year, the American military is putting together an elite task force called G.I. Joe that consists only of the best men and women of the armed forces. This task force includes some familiar names: Flint, Lonzo Wilkinson, Scarlet, Jay, Roadblock, and Snake Eyes. While the newly created team is gathered in the pit and is being debriefed on the concerns of what is transpiring in Europe and the Pacific Rim, it is cut short by a shiny metallic vulture-looking spy, Laserbeak. When Laserbeak returns to the Terradrome located in the Farah Islands, we find out that Cobra and the Decepticons have joined forces, but the alliance is delicate at best, within Cobra and between Cobra and the Decepticons. As the Joes are en route to recon the Cobra base, Megatron and Starscream destroy the planes that the Joes are flying on. Many of the Joes survive, only to be attacked by a sniper and Storm Shadow. The Joes retreat into the nearby ruins, where they discover the head of a giant metal monster. So what did you guys think of this issue? Delvin, we're going to start with you.
Out of the four of us, I bet I'm going to be the least enthusiastic about it. So I'm glad you started with me. Now, by no means am I going to start dumping on the comic book or anything. How could I? It's G.I. Joe versus the Transformers. And I'm going to say the best thing that I can possibly say about it right up front. The idea is fantastic. It's just a really solid idea. You're used to seeing Transformers and the G.I. Joe being set in the 80s. And so whoever had the idea of, hey, what if we kickstarted this whole thing and it was back in a period piece? What if we turned it into a piece of historical science fiction? That is a fantastic idea. And whoever came up with it, whether it's John Nay, Reber or Reiber, deserves to be praised for it. That was a great idea. Also, Jay Lee's artwork is amazing. And I know someone else is going to say something about that. It was just slick and dynamic throughout. The other part of it for me is just, it always brings up my Joe inadequacies. Like, I'll recognize a few names, like, okay, I kind of recognize that one. Okay, I kind of don't. And so it feels like I miss out on some of the story, but I just want to end it by saying the idea in itself is a fantastic.
Yeah, with the darker tone, and if you're not familiar with the characters, the Joes or the Transformers, it is a little bit harder to follow, but so I can see where that can be a hindrance. So next up is Jason.
I'll tag on to that. I agree 100% with Delvin. The concept hooked me in from the get-go. The fellas know that you throw anything in World War II and I'm checking it out. And the concept was really cool too. And to Delvin's point about the characters, I could see where that might get frustrating. They didn't really show too many Transformers in this book, because I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum, where I know the G.I. Joe characters really well. It's the Transformers characters that I'm less sure of. But even the ones that they introduced in this book, I knew, and I noticed that the Joes that they used in the story were some of the more familiar ones and some of the more unique looking ones. Of course, you're going to get Snake Eyes, and then you have Scarlet and Jay, and you can tell those are the two ladies, and one has flaming red hair. And so there are little things that stick out, so it helps you remember which characters are which. So I thought that was helpful. And I'll just say, with Jay Lee's art, I guess when I think of Transformers, I think of like Pat Lee's art, that type of style. And I wouldn't have thought that Jay Lee would naturally kind of translate over to this robotic style. I'm used to stuff like the Inhumans and things like that, seeing his work in there, where it's a little darker, a little grittier, not so much that sleek robotic look, but somehow this really works. He really pulls it off. And it's just such a nice blend of the technological look of the robots and that burned out bleak landscape of World War II Europe. That combination, like, he somehow managed to blend those things together pretty seamlessly, and that'll be reflected in my candy cane score at the end.
As far as Jay Lee's art, when he came on the scene in the 90s, that style that he had in the 90s was a lot different than what was in this book here. I'm not the artist, but I think it evolved. I think he got better to fit this book, so I think that helped a lot. So, like I said, in the 90s on X Factor, he was, that's the first time I remember seeing him was on X Factor, and I think, yeah, he's good, but it was hard to follow his art through the book. Whereas in this one, I think he improved and it was easier to follow.
Yeah, it was surprising how good it looked.
Pat, you're up next. What do you got? What do you think of this issue?
Well, I'm going to really just kind of echo again what Delvin and Jason were saying about taking this concept and putting it into that timepiece. I was like, wow, that is a really interesting idea. And then to see the characters and what they look like in that time period, and then having the robots, but they're actually, realistic mechanical devices from that time period. I had to look again. I'm like, oh, did Starscream just turn into a propeller jet? I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And knowing both sides of the characters, with some of my Transformer knowledge now, along with my G.I. Joe background, was really cool to see it all kind of come together, and both sides, and that the writer was getting their characteristics down pretty good. And I was like, man, how cool would it be to hear Chris Latta just talking back to himself between Starscream and Cobra Commander together like that. Those are the voices. I continue to hear that in my head when I was reading this. And I thought, wow, this would be kind of really cool to see possibly animated or something like that. But Jay Lee's art, we talked dark, this was dark toned, and that's what made it a little bit harder for me to kind of go through, because this thing could really pop a lot better if he wasn't so heavy dark tones, and maybe Jared can speak to it a little bit more. I don't know if it's the coloring that they asked to use more of a darker wash-de-dote kind of a tone to fit what was happening here, or he just likes to use a lot of shading. Like, did he ink himself? Because man, if you had to be his inker, you're going through a lot of dark, a lot of black just to get that shading down and all that. But from what I could see through the artwork, it looked really good. I just needed it a little more light in it, a little more pow and zam would have been great for me on a color wise. But other than that, I liked the concept, liked the story, liked the characters that they were using. They didn't go overboard with naming everybody all at once, and you see some really cool call-outs, like the name of the ship that transported them over was the Hama. I thought, oh, that's a really cool callback to Larry Hama that I thought was, a nod of the cap to him. Yeah, overall, really cool concept, and I can't believe I kind of missed out on this one.
All right. Thanks, Pat. As far as characters later on like you said, they didn't put too many characters in the first issue. They do introduce more as the series goes on, all the way up through to, some of them you don't see them till issue 5. And then,
all right.
So they slowly introduce them, but you get a lot more G.I. Joe and Transformer characters later on in the miniseries. All right, Jared, you're up next. What did you think of this issue?
All right. Didn't read it, but if I did, this would be my notes. Let's talk about Jay Lee for a minute. Like, he draws some really cool stuff, especially given that, as Delvin kicked us off talking about that time shift into late 1930s. I don't think he's the best sequential artist for this story. I think he would have been great on covers. I feel like his style looks really good for this. I think a cover work would be fantastic. I think he did do all the covers, and it is fantastic. But like, I love Jay Lee. Don't get me wrong. My favorite thing that he's done is the Gunslinger books for Marvel, Stephen King's Gunslinger books, which I have the 2 fancy hardbounds. I got him to sign it and everything. I think he's incredible. I just don't think sequentially this book was for him. He can do good sequential storytelling. So he's only half the quote unquote problem, much like Delvin. I'm not going to tear this book down, but the hardest part about this book is following the story, and the sequential art is tough. And I feel like the writer, I think he tried to put too much lore in here for a book 1, or maybe I don't remember how many was this a 3-book series, 6-book series? Okay. So this was a 6-book series. I feel like he might have needed 8, because this first one was just so packed. Like, it was already kind of hard to keep up with. It was jumping around a lot. And about the time they got to like, okay, now we're going to address the whole Storm Shadow Snake Eyes thing, I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. We have so much in this book right now. Yeah,
they could have saved that for later.
Yeah, I was like, goodness gracious. He really wanted to get it all in here in issue 1, but that might have been more of the editors dictating to him what he needed to do over a limited series. So I'm not trying to beat up anybody in particular. I like this book quite a bit. Much like Delvin said, a period piece World War II sci-fi, very much in my wheelhouse too. You guys remember we had War That Time Forgot last year, which had dinosaurs and a robot and all that. And I'm into that. And I'm into this. So I do think the book is very, very good. I just feel like it could have been better if you had more of a clearer art style for the story flow. I would have kept Jay Lee on covers, and I would have given John maybe an extra couple issues to let this breathe a little more. That's Jared's hindsight, 20 years later review. I still like it quite a bit. Jay Lee did a great job. It's a very moody book. It's a very tonal book. He's drawing World War II era aircraft and vehicles and stuff, which is not easy to do. And he did a good job. I liked his character redesigns for the Joes that you can see. Again, it's very dark. I'm still not clear on what Snake Eyes looks like, which in a way is kind of cool because, you kind of don't know what, he's very sneaky like that. I was very excited to see the first Joe that they really introduced, sort of recruiting in the Joes, was very much like in the old 80s comics. Stalker is really how it's brought in. And I was like, yeah, Stalker's like the OG Joe, and he's one of my very, very favorites. So absolutely very excited to see that come together. So a lot of hits. I probably spent too much time on the one miss. I thought the sequential could have been better, but absolutely keep Jay Lee on the covers and let him draw a couple posters for this. The advertising work, absolutely. And give John like 2-3 more books to let it breathe.
The Snake Eyes Storm Shadow meet up, I guess. Mm-hmm. It actually continues through the whole miniseries.
I vaguely remember that.
And Stalker gets involved as well in the skirmish. So that harkens back to the Larry Hama days where Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, Stalker are always connected, always together. So that I like how they kept that together in the book similar. So and to your point with the Jay Lee, I agree. The flow, the sequential, as I was saying with Jason, it was better than when it had X Factor and Namor and stuff. So maybe I'm sure he was evolving as he got better. It's just my visual and my seeing his work throughout the years.
Absolutely.
I'm not the artist, so
it does allow this book in particular, of all the Transformers G.I. Joe crossovers, which off the top of my head I can think of. I have a vivid memory of 3 of them. I'm certain there's been more. But it really lets it stand out. From across the room, you can be like, that's the World War II era one. I can tell from the look, and that's got to say something. At least it's got its own stamp, and that's kind of cool.
Now it's time to rate your interest in the series using the official Crusademas candy cane scale. On a scale of 1 to 12 candy canes, 12 being extremely interested and 1 being no interest at all, how many candy canes would you rate your interest in pursuing more issues of this title? I think I'm going to start with Delvin.
Put me at a 9. I am, and that 9 comes from, for me, I did enjoy the artwork. I can understand it being dark, and that it's, wartime, and, I could see why things are a little bit dark. I thought for Jay to go outside of his comfort zone like that, he usually does more flashy and dynamic. I thought that was a pretty cool concept for him to do. All of it is that cool concept. And that more than anything is giving me a 9. For whatever reason, not for whatever reason. I mean, I do get it. I love how every iteration of G.I. Joe versus Transformers, if Cobra and the Decepticons got along, they would destroy the Autobots and the G.I. Joe, and they never get along.
It's the same thing in regular G.I. Joe. Their infighting screws them every time.
Every single time. It is such a character arc. I mean, because where they already have a good idea, they're going after the Matrix, like the world is fearing them, and sure enough, you can already see the seeds of discontent sowing. So lots of good ideas throughout, and very clearly, John Reber and Jay Lee had a love and affection for the stories that went from the past. So I give it a 9.
Thank you, Delvin. Jared, what's your candy cane rating?
Well, this was a tough one because I always do it based off of how much I'd want to pursue it. Do I want to go to eBay and get the full run and get it hardbound? Am I going to look in dollar bins? Well, I already bought it. I bought it back in the day off the shelf. I don't know if I still have it. I would be interested in getting it again. So doing the math in my head. I think I'm right there with Delvin. I may bump it up to a 10 just because I do have a fond, even though I said Jay Lee wasn't the sequential guy. I have a fondness for Jay Lee. I really do. I can look at this and I can see, just like you said, Jim, watching him go from X Factor to this, I can see him going from this to Gunslinger, which is insanely good. He's the perfect fit for that. So yeah, I will go 10. I'll go one higher than Delvin because I like this idea, this World War II idea a lot. And I do really like the way it ended because you're like, man, like Delvin said, you got Cobra Commander in cahoots with Megatron, Soundwave, and Starscream. And then at the end, it's like, oh, what have the Joes found? And we know what they found. We know they found Optimus, and this is about to get like all the way lit. So it's very exciting, cliffhanger. So lots of words, 10. I might have beat Jason's word count for a scoring there. I'm not sure. We'll find out.
All right, Jason, what's your candy cane rating for this issue?
All right, here we go. Humor, heart, spectacle, and art. Humor, I'm going to give it a 1. The only time I laughed is when Snake Eyes threw those dice and then Flint tried to threaten him, like get tough on him. Like, you throw those dice at me one more time, soldier. Snake Eyes like, what? And what are you coming to?
I like the overt sexual harassment of Lady J and
that's what I was going to say.
I was trying to overlook that one.
You can't overlook that. You can't.
So I gave the humor a 1 on this. Heart, full 3. I mean, it's G.I. Joe. It's Transformers. Throw it in World War II. Man, it's tugging on all my heartstrings. Spectacle, I'm going to give it a 3. I agree with Jared that the pacing was a little frantic for the first issue, but it checked off boxes that I wanted to see. I wanted to see Autobots. I wanted to see Decepticons. I wanted to see Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow throw down. So I'm getting a little bit of all that in the first issue. So I'll give that a 3. In art, yeah, I'm going to go with a 2 for all the reasons that we brought up. I think the concept, and it looks really good. I'm with Pat. It was a little hard to follow when you on the storyboard sequences a little bit. That's the only thing that's bringing it down a bit for me. I think Jay Lee's doing a bang up job on it, and I'd be interested to see what else he has, in future issues. So in total, that's 1, 3, that's 4, that's 7, that's 9. And then of course, because of, it's you, Jim, I'm going to give you an extra candy cane and 10 candy canes for me.
All right. Thank you, Jason. That just leaves Pat. What's your candy cane rating for this issue?
Well, I am going to go and hang out with 3 cool guys at a 10 for this. It got me with G.I. Joe. You got me with Transformers. If I'm going to go look for these while I'm bin diving out somewhere and I find them now, I'll grab them. It's just the art was really cool to look at when it was light. It's just so dark that something about it. I don't know why. Was it meant to be this way? I want to know that question. Did they do it just to make it this way or what?
Call out the character's name in the speech bubble.
I want to know. Like at the end, the reveal at the end is like, I still don't know what you're looking at, but I'm guessing it's Optimus Prime. It's like I don't know really what I can't see it, and it's like, you kind of want that, don't you? But yeah, I'm at a 10. I like the concept. The concept is really cool.
Yeah, I'll defend it a little bit. I kind of thought it might have been the concept to, because it's in 1938. Nobody's really seen robots before. Nobody's seen Transformers before. So this is the first time they're seeing this. So maybe that's part of the intent of trying to hide it in darkness a little bit so that there's that mysteriousness for the reader as well. I don't know. I'm kind of going out on a limb here, but maybe.
I just think in some other places too, it was still hard to see things in the background because it was just, if he was going for a darker tone, just so, setting that mood with that tone of the color, then okay, darker times, war going on, trying to get that gritty feel. I don't need it to be cartoony or anything like that. I just felt like we could have used a little more light spots to, maybe pinpoint out a little more stuff on here.
All right, 3 10s and Uncle Scrooge is back with a 9.
I knew that when I was putting this one up there for my choice, I knew that the art would be its detriment and its positive at the same time. As Pat was saying, it's great. It's great art, but it's hard to follow sometimes. All right. Thanks, guys, for the candy canes. That should hold me through to the Christmas here coming up in a week or so. Let me just give a couple of recommendations for if you like this series. There's a couple other ones that if you like chocolate with your peanut butter or G.I. Joe with your Transformers. The Devil's Due did 4 miniseries of varying length. I think there was the first one was 6 issues, second one was 5 or 6, and those are very good. They're a little bit lighter tone, a little bit lighter, still a good storyline. And then, of course, the one issue of Divided Front, which was the continuation of this, which was set in the 1980s. For only one issue, I really wish they would have been able to do more because the one issue was really good. So that's all I got.
Well, thank you, Jim. And that will wrap up day 1 of the 12 Days of Crusademas. We'd love to hear from you if you're familiar with any of the comics we cover here on the show, or if you give one of our recommendations a try and you just want to let us know what you think about it. You can reach out to us on Twitter or X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and we're all at Longbox Crusade. You can email us at contact@longboxcrusade.com, or you can even pick up the phone and call us at 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX.
Pick up the phone.
All right. Thank you, fellas. And if you're loving Crusademas and didn't get a chance to listen last year, or if you just want to hear more Crusademas, you can scroll far back enough on our feed. You can find all episodes from Crusademas Past. We're talking 2023, 2022, 2020. Just go back to 2017, and then now, and then all the years in between. You can find all of those. We've been doing this a long time, fellas. Long time.
Yes.
That's why I think I'm squinting at my script. He's just getting me. All right, back to you, Jim.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Be sure to come back tomorrow to find out what the next gift is from under the tree here in the festively decorated Longbox Crusade Studios. Thanks for having me, fellas. Until next time, DJ Cristados, play me a Christmas jam.
Wickedy, whack. Chinga, chinga.
All songs, song clips, and characters discussed are copyright of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended. We are just fans that like to share our love of comics.
Outtakes.
I got to record it. Yeah, we're getting going. We're missing the gold.
I was thinking and a snake eyes and a pear tree myself.
This is what I just changed it to. And a G.I. Joe Transformers book. That's what I just changed it to. That's why I changed it to G.I. Joe Transformers.
I hear you,
You got the script and changed it. It would say snake.
But the thing is, it's GI Joe and Transformer, so it'd have to be like a Snake Eyes and Optimus Prime. No, a Snake Eyes and a Meg.
Jim, you sing it how you want to sing it, Jim. Make it happen.